Only you can know what's meaningful to you. And every person, I think, has a different path. You can tell when you're experiencing meaningful work and where you're in flow, where you lose track of time, where you're absorbed in what you're doing and you're kind of loving it. And this is something that I could spend my everyday doing. I think that that's ultimately what people are seeking when they're looking for meaningful work.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Path Found, the podcast about the real, messy, unexpected journeys that lead us to the work we love. I'm Monica Argandonia, and every week I talk with someone whose story proves there's no single right way to build a meaningful life. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. I am genuinely excited to introduce you to someone who has built one of the most original and meaningful careers I've come across. Anna Sachs, better known online as the Trash Walker, grew up on the Upper West Side of New York City. She studied East Asian languages at Northwestern and Columbia, spent time in Beijing and Singapore, and then landed in the world that many ambitious New Yorkers find themselves in, investment banking. But the work never felt inherently meaningful. That phrase became her North Star. Anna walked away from finance and participated in a Jewish farming fellowship in Connecticut that changed everything. She started doing something almost no one else would consider doing, walking the streets of New York City, going through the trash, and showing the world what we're throwing away. What followed was years of advocacy, legislative wins, viral moments that forced corporations like Coach and Starbucks to respond, and a new role at Beyond Plastics. Anna's story is one of the clearest examples I've heard of what happens when you stop trying to justify your work and start doing work that you can't stop thinking about. Let's get started. So I'm just going to jump right in if you don't mind. And so I'd like to start just by asking kind of a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and kind of what kind of kid were you?
I grew up in New York City on the Upper West Side where I still live. And I actually recently rediscovered these report cards or progress reports from when I was in nursery. And there was a line in it where it says that Anna does not like waste and with arts and crafts would use the scrap paper and integrate it into my art. So I think that since then I've always kind of hated to see things go to waste. Yeah, as a kid, I think a lot of my core personality was established. I think a lot of who I am is the same person I was then. I became a vegetarian when I was 4. After I learned that chicken was made from the animal chicken, I stopped eating meat. I loved puzzles. I loved playing with friends. I loved the stories and books. I think a lot of my core identities were established then.
I love that you early on did not like waste. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I was so shocked to see that. I was like, this is I didn't think of, I thought that this was a more recent development. I thought it happens, more when I was in middle school and I loved thrifting and stuff like that. I didn't realize it went back that early.
So when you were in high school and college, did you know what you wanted to do?
No. My goal in high school was to go to an Ivy League college or a really good college. I went to a very intense all-girls school, and that was kind of the shared goal among everyone, I think. And then in college, I majored in East Asian languages and cultures, and I spent time in Asia a little bit. And I thought that maybe I would do something related to Asia, actually. I thought because I really enjoyed my time there. I did a summer study abroad in Beijing, and then I interned in Singapore one summer, and I love the culture there. I love traveling there. So I thought that that's where maybe I would end up.
So where did you end up?
Post college, I did a series. The big theme has been the search for inherently meaningful work. And so post college, I worked at a gallery in Paris for a little bit, an internship there that does art brut or outsider art. And then I worked at a photography gallery in New York City. I did an internship there. And that was because I love photography also. And I thought that maybe that would be a career path, being in the art world, working in a museum, working in a gallery. And I found that the day-to-day of that was more tedious than I wanted. It was more, just administrative tasks. It was like I prefer going to museum than like helping put the like do tasks to get that exhibition going, you
Okay.
know. And then I worked at an investment bank for Asia focused investment bank for a couple of years, and it was a really good learning experience. And I liked my colleagues a lot, and I liked a lot of aspects of the work too. It felt cool. Like I felt like I'm in these room with these decision makers, and kind of in contrast to the administrative tasks that I was doing before, it's like I actually have some power, some say. Like I'm in these meetings, I'm in the room, I'm helping with these mergers and acquisitions and capital raises, but the work was not inherently meaningful.
Okay.
So I would find roundabout ways to justify it. Like, okay, we're preventing this company from going bankrupt, and we're saving this heritage of over 100 years, and we're saving all these jobs. And so we're preserving some like culture and history and jobs, but it wasn't in and of itself meaningful. And like that became my litmus test. And I wanted to leave, and I did this retreat at this Jewish center called the Isabel Friedman Jewish Retreat Center in Connecticut, and found out about this Jewish farming fellowship called Adama, which was starting in like just a couple weeks, the new cohort. And I applied for the fellowship, and I quit my job within 2 weeks. And so like went very quickly from the investment bank to the farming.
So going back a little bit, your internships in Singapore and Beijing, were they in finance? Like how did you kind of transition into that?
Well, it was a summer study abroad in Beijing through I was at Northwestern at the time, so that was through Northwestern, and then the summer internship in Singapore was through Columbia because I transferred to Columbia. And then the East Asian, honestly, it was through family connections, the investment bank where my brother had worked there before, and it did help, of course, that I had this background in East Asia also.
Okay.
But it was I don't know if they would have hired me if it weren't for those family connections.
And so you're there, and that's a big jump. You just quit your job. And I mean, were you unhappy, or was it just, I want something more meaningful?
I think it was both. I had been there for a couple of years, and over time, the kind of sacrifices I had to make started to build. And I was upset that, I would miss friends' birthday parties, or I would make plans and then I would have to cancel at the last minute. And then I stopped making plans during the weekdays because I thought this like I'm just gonna have to cancel. So my social life really shrank. And I think it's easier when you have a strong why. If you're doing that sort of thing and you have a very strong why, I think you can sustain yourself. Like if the why was, I'm eventually going to start my own private equity company, or I'm eventually going to, start my investment bank or whatever, like that's my ultimate goal. But I didn't have that very strong why. Why am I making these sacrifices? I also felt like this is a lot of, I get frustrated when there's like artificial deadlines that feel forced and unnecessary, so it's like, we're not saving lives here. It's okay if this is like, we don't have to work at this pace. And it felt unnatural. I like, if I were saving lives, I don't think I would have cared so much about like missing these personal milestones. But in the context of working in finance, that the disconnect between the perceived gravity of the situation and the actual reality of the situation and what you're expected to do and sacrifice was kind of too much for me.
Okay. So how was the farm experience?
I loved it. It was very intense, but but it was intense in a good way where, you would wake up at 6 a.m. and you would have chores, and it was a Jewish farming fellowship. So we integrated Judaism a lot into it. We would have like avodat lev in the morning, which means like work of the heart, which would sometimes be like silent meditation or sitting outside in nature or around. And sometimes you would have a bonfire going and playing guitar and singing together, next to the lake. And so it was like these beautiful rituals integrated into it. And but it was very intense because you'd be up from till 6 a.m. and then going and doing like very full days. And then I would go to bed around like 9 p.m. because I'd be so exhausted, like physically and emotionally and all the ways. But the three main pillars were intentional living and Jewish learning, and then the actual farming. And I would say actually learning in general, Jewish and environmental learning, both of those. So every day kind of integrated these different components, and it was very unique. Most of us lived together, and we would have weekly meetings, and we would kind of try to live with intention. And I had done Jewish communal living before in college, but this was a kind of different scale of it, or it was more than just chores and like figuring out how can we live together and divide up these chores and make the house kind of flow. It was also what type of space do we want to be creating, and what type of conversations do we want to be having, what type of events do we want to be putting on, and like how is our emotional health, and kind of like check-ins. So it was it was really beautiful time. Like, in all of us, one of the things that united us was that everyone was kind of like in transition or seeking, and it was a place for people to go during that period to help, in some cases, like in mine, redirect, or in some cases deepen, where they already knew what they wanted to do but wanted to go deeper into it. And I think that it had a very profound effect on me, and I think that sort of program, yeah, Adama, like, and maybe similar programs also, just like it can be transformative when you go into like these immersive programs, and you're able to take time and like really think about what type of life do you want to live.
How long were you there?
The program itself was 3 months through the fall, and then I stayed for the winter also. So I ended up staying around 6 months.
So when you left, what did you see yourself doing?
One of the big things I was pursuing was compost after I left. Compost became a North Star for me. And when people asked me what I wanted to do, I would say compost, because I thought it was like, it was so radical. It was so transformational. It felt very ancient and mystical and natural, and some like this missing link that I had never really learned about that made so much sense. And so I wanted to bring composting to New York City. That was a big goal of mine. And I spent a period afterwards really trying to figure out what to do. Like, how do I get into this waste world? And I was trying to avoid going back to school, because I don't actually love school. And maybe it's just like intense school I don't love, but I didn't want to go get a master's. I also didn't want to have to spend money and possibly like put myself in debt to do that. And I didn't want to start from scratch also. I felt like at that point in my career, I wanted something a little bit more than an entry-level job. And I had a confusing resume. So I wasn't a good candidate to get a job, really. And I started doing things under my control. So I was volunteering at the nonprofit Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, helping do food rescue. And I did this master composting course at the Lower East Side Ecology Center. And I started going through the trash. Like, that was more my curiosity of like, what are we tossing? And then the impetus to create my social media around it was to create kind of a trail and to show that despite not having the academic credentials and despite not having the cohesive resume, like, this is something that I care about. And I started posting about waste issues and posting about what I was finding on my trash walk. And ultimately, that did lead to a job at Think Zero, which is a waste reduction diversion consulting firm. But in the interim, it took around a year to get there. And I was also teaching after school Hebrew for a period, like during that period, and applying for jobs and trying to do these different things. So it took some time to like land in the place where I wanted to land.
So what kept you going? I mean, you literally went through trash and you're posting it on social media. So you're creating a spot for yourself. But what kept you going? I mean, you had a year kind of piecing this together for a year.
the obsession and the passion, because like this was the inherently meaningful work that I had been seeking. And the going through the trash, I mean, I was doing that anyways. I like once I returned from Adama, I started going on these trash walks in my neighborhood and like pulling out usable things and bringing them home. And so it wasn't that I was doing that just for social media. Social media definitely became a motivator to, like let me find these things and then show people what I was finding. But I wouldn't have continued if it wasn't a genuine passion and obsession of mine, and if it wasn't the work that I had been seeking that felt inherently meaningful. And yeah, it just felt like this is where I wanted to redirect my life. I'm done searching, kind of like I'm done. I don't need to try this path or that path. Like I had tried the photography thing and I had tried the finance thing and I had tried like other internships, and this is the one that I felt like this is the one that like I couldn't sleep at night because I was thinking about these type of things. And also for me, I'm one of my big, I don't know if it's like a passion, obsession, and struggle is my relationship to stuff and my love for things. And like this also, that's been present. Like I had mentioned the thrifting, since I was 11 years old, I've loved thrifting. I've loved going through like rummaging, going through piles of stuff, finding things. And this is an extension of that. And I've loved objects and felt, I feel like it's more of like this Japanese sense of objects where they're more than just objects. They can contain spirits. They're like part of they're part of the spiritual world in some way. Like that they're not, it's not just a thing. There's something beyond it. And yeah, so I felt that too. Like I would put a lot of emotional weight onto things for better or worse. And this was a continuation of that, but in a way that felt more meaningful. Yeah, definitely more meaningful than just thrifting. It felt like this is something that is operating on so many different levels. The avoidance of waste and avoidance of going to landfills and incinerators and the environmental and human harm and animal harm that it does, and the recirculating items that people need, and the building community as a result of that recirculation, and the saving these objects with history and with like meaning to them. All that, yeah, it felt that this is something that I could do forever and I wouldn't get bored of.
So you land the job, and how long are you with that?
I was at Think Zero for 3 or 4 years.
And what kind of work are you doing for them?
I was doing waste audits. So corporations would hire us to go through their trash, and then it would be, you put together a very meticulous report where you're saying like, here's what we found in the trash and here's what we found in the recyclables. Here's the percentage of trash that is not actually trash and could be recycled or could be composted or could be reused. But yeah, it would be basically sorting through their trash for like 4 hours and weighing things and taking photos and putting together these reports. And then we would do trainings, work with corporations and do employee trainings, help them culture change as much as possible, like form green teams, do events for Earth Day. And then we would do compliance assessments of like, are you in compliance with the New York City commercial waste rules? And yeah, those were the core elements of my work there.
So why'd you leave?
I felt like it was time for me to continue on. And I will say, in retrospect, I don't know if that was the right decision. Like financially, it was not the right decision to do that. But I was gaining traction as the trash walker. I had started the Save Our Compost Coalition and was wanting to do more about legislation. I thought that between social media collaborations and consulting and speaking, I would be able to financially support myself and then to be able to devote more time to the trash walker and to my like legislative work. And the time part was true. I was able to devote more time to those things. The financial part ended up not being true. Like I wasn't able to financially support myself through that patchwork of things. So, in retrospect, like I've taken these big leaps in the past and they've worked out for me. And so I did take this big leap and like it worked out in some ways and did not work out in other ways that I had thought it would work out.
So, but now you are full-time the trash walker.
No, no.
Oh, okay.
So that's a good change. So I've been doing that for the past, I left Think Zero in 2021. So the past 4 or 5 years. And it hasn't been financially feasible. And I had a son last year also. And it just changes the equation of it also. It like having a family. And so I just started this past week a new job at Beyond Plastics, which is a great nonprofit fighting against plastics just broadly, the expansion of the petrochemical industry, fighting for better legislation regulating plastics and reducing the amount of single-use waste. And I'm very grateful to have found this. Like this is like it's a great fit for me with my advocacy, with my values. It is inherently meaningful. The founder, Judith Enck, is an incredible mentor who's been in this fight for decades and who I have a lot to learn from. And it provides financial stability. Like I don't have to be worried about when is my next brand deal coming? Am I going to get a brand deal? Like which wasn't really under my control.
So in the past few years as the trash walker, I mean, you've tried to change policy and get the message out. Do you feel like you've had some successes?
Yeah. And that's the thing that it's like the irony is that I was very, very successful. I was very successful in those ways, but I neglected myself in the process and like just straight up financially. I did a lot of volunteer work or unpaid work. I was the legislative chair of the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board, which is a citizens group. So like, you're not getting paid for that, but we would do like testify at city council hearings and discuss pending legislation and meet with council members and suggest different types of legislation that we would like to see. And as part of Save Our Compost, we fought successfully for more funding for community composting and also for the expansion of composting. So hugely successful in both of those. Like we were able to get, I think it was around $28 million for community composting over the past 6 years. So incredibly, like that, it's amazing, incredibly successful and helping these incredible nonprofits do composting education in New York City and composting, like processing, creating the actual compost. And we are able to pass one of the most transformational laws help pass it. One of the most transformational laws in New York City waste really since I would say like the advent of recycling in 1989, where now every New Yorker is required by law to separate out their food scraps, which has the potential to reduce the amount of trash by 40%. It's not there. We're nowhere near that. We have a very low capture rate, like the amount that people are actually putting into the compost bin, but the potential is there.
Right.
So yeah, it was I'm very proud of what we as a coalition were able to achieve.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just getting people educated about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that that's an issue. You've taken on corporate America in waste. What has that been like? And do you feel like you've had successes there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the most notable case was Coach with their slashing their in-store returns, and they had to respond and they said they would no longer destroy in-store returns. And I think that it helped. At different times, there had been a spotlight on corporate destruction, and there had been Burberry being they admitted that they were burning tens of millions of dollars of merchandise each year. There had been with H&M, their destruction of merchandise. There have been these different instances. And I was really grateful to be able to put it back in the spotlight and to be contributing to that story. I tried before. I tried like multiple times. I just feel like you keep trying and trying, and then sometimes it hits, sometimes it breaks through. And that it actually resulted in them changing their policy. And I think also it helped then Coach started doing more circular. I don't know what circular. They started doing the Coachtopia thing afterwards, which is like trying to integrate these scraps into their products but it made them take it more seriously, which I was happy about, because these things happen. The corporate destruction typically happens out of sight, and as a result, people don't know about it, despite how widespread it is, and corporations continue with it. And then with Starbucks, I also was able at times I'm not quite sure how much impact that had in reality, but it was able to spotlight how they had been promising that they would be donating all this food, and then the food actually was ending up in the trash, and they had to respond as a result of that. And then how their store closing policies, how like when they're closing their stores, they end up dumping a lot of merchandise. I don't think that has actually resulted. I was hoping it would result in like policy changes where they would say like, okay, if you're closing down a store, we're just going to transfer these, coffee beans and cups and whatever to other stores. I don't actually think that that's happened, unfortunately. But I do think that like more and more, I think it's chipping away at this myth that corporations are these benevolent friends, which is just, they're absolutely not true. Corporations are entities that are profit seeking and that respond to profit and money and will shift whichever way the money is blowing. So there isn't like this, they don't have, unless there are different, like some corporations are better than others, but they don't have a moral center like the way in which individual humans do,
Right.
If I think an individual human in that situation would be like, okay, I'm not going to destroy these handbags. That doesn't make any sense.
Do you think that the more people know about this, the more pressure they can put? Like there is power in what people do if they're educated. I think a lot of people just don't know that Coach was doing that, and they don't know that this gets tossed in the trash. Do you think, and we live in such a disposable society. Do you think there's a shift in how we think about that, especially as we see more and more of this?
Yes. I think that there's a shift. I think you can tell, it feels like there's a big shift happening where people are getting fed up, and that's a good thing. Like people are getting fed up with the wealth inequality. People are getting fed up with corporations polluting. People are getting fed up with the status quo of for-profit healthcare and for-profit prison systems, for-profit education systems, like everything having, we're really, there shouldn't be profit at all. These sectors should be serving the people, not serving shareholders. So I think that there is a rise in kind of hatred for the systems that we've built. And that's a good thing. I don't think we have the outlet. I don't actually think we have the power, and I don't think we have the outlets to express our power. Meaning like the tools that we have been given, I think, are very insufficient for the moments that we're in. Voting is insufficient. It's something, but it's not enough. Protesting, I think we've been protesting for a while, and that hasn't really led to major changes at the scale needed. Yeah, so I just think calling your legislators, like the tools that we have are not enough, and I don't think that the people in power are meeting the moment or like realizing just how upset people are and how fed up they are with the status quo. And I think that's why you see the rise of populism, right? And it's because our elected officials, I think, have abdicated their responsibility to the people and are preserving the status quo instead of trying something new, trying something different, which would be risky. But I think that like even more risky is maintaining the status quos that we've built.
So what do you think then should happen next? Like, how do we shift that power?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I just think that I don't think we have enough tools. I think that's the problem. We really like it just feels like I think we need a new generation of leaders, and we need people who are in power to step out of power. I think that there maybe should be congressional term limits. I think that there should be a lot of these reforms in how we elect people, right? It's hard to say, like congressional term limits, abolishing the electoral college would be great, getting money out of politics, corporate money out of politics, like undoing Citizen United. So those are some of the starting points. I'm just like I'm not optimistic. That's like my general feeling right now. It's like I'm not optimistic in the direction that the world is going, and yeah, our leadership and the ability to like actually serve the people and not corporations. Yeah, I maybe I'll be more optimistic in the future. But in this current moment, I'm kind of like a little bit at a loss.
So when you're not optimistic, and I can understand that, you've had successes though.
Mhm.
And, there's all these great organizations out there doing all this work. You have lots of young people who want to go into this work. What would you tell them that
Mm.
about, what should they set their sights on, and how do they stay in it even through pessimism?
Well, so I say that on the one hand, and I'm still in it, right? I'm still in it. I'm still fighting. I'm still trying to do what I can. Where I have found the biggest success is looking at the local level. I would start at the local level and then the state level and then the federal level in that order. The local level, I think you can have the biggest bang for your buck in terms of time spent and impact that you can have because your council members are directly elected by you and you can have a direct relationship with them. Like I have my council member's cell phone number and I text her when I see these like wasteful, mostly I focus on like school waste because I'm hoping that she might do something about that. But you should definitely get to know your council member and then you should join an existing group or form one if there isn't. Focus on a very specific issue that's achievable that you want to see. So if that's you want to start a food scrap drop off site that's funded by by taxpayer dollars, like that's a great starting point. If you want to see money for swaps or city support for swaps, like that's also a great starting point. If you want to organize around, there are other issues. There's a lot with plastics that you could do. There's kind of some smaller things like the skip the stuff bill where you wouldn't allow single use utensils to be included with your takeout order unless like you specifically ask for it. So there's so many things that are small that do add up and are achievable at the local level. And I think you have to be in that. You have to be in the fight. You have to stay in it and focus on where you can get those wins, where you can have an impact. I'm doing it, and I'm in it and I'm fighting for these incremental changes. But the thing that I'm frustrated about is we need much more than incremental changes. And so that's the difficulty. Like, how can you transform the larger thing? How can you transition to a degrowth economy where it's not based around endless consumption of goods? Like that's very hard to do. And that seems not achievable. And no politician is pursuing that at all. But ultimately, that is what we need to be doing. Like we don't need any more clothing.
Right.
We really don't. Or we need much, much fewer garments produced each year. So that's not happening. I'm going to, I personally am opting out of the system and I don't purchase new for like as much as possible. I don't purchase new. But it's still the system is still churning in the background. So those are the things I think that like I hold of trying to like I am pessimistic about the changes that we need to happen and the fact that they're not happening, but trying to do what I can at the scale that I can.
So when you were, and you still are, trash walking, what surprised you the most? What was the most shocking?
I mean, at this point, nothing because I've been doing it for a while and see these things. But I think initially it was like from CVS and Walgreens, Duane Reade, the trash bags filled with candy that was still good, the trash bags filled with stuff from past holidays, and just the scale that I would see sometimes of that, where it could be like 10 trash bags filled with like Christmas merchandise outside of one single store. And then I think also when I encounter someone just like tossing the entire contents of a person's life, yes, at first shocking, but like I become numb to the corporate waste that I see, but like it still feels very emotional to me when I see that, when I see someone's life, all the things that they accumulated, then going into the trash. That still is difficult for me to process. And then, yeah, there's like all the patterns. So the college waste at the end of the school year, at first shocking to me. Now that's just what it is, it seems, despite there being a lot of solutions to that. The end of the school year race for the public school system and private school system is like coming up. And so I'm expecting a lot of waste to come from there. Yeah, I become used to it.
Right. If you were talking to either your younger self or a young college student today, what advice would you give them as far as finding work that is meaningful to them, that fits in with their values?
Only you can know what's meaningful to you, and every person I think has a different path. And I think for me, it was like, what do I go to bed thinking about? What do I wake up thinking about? What is something that I could talk about and learn about and watch webinars about and not get bored and just think that there's so much more for me to learn. There's so much more for me to integrate and to advocate for and to try to leave my mark here. Like that's what waste is for me. So I don't know. And I don't know if that's for everyone. I don't know if everyone is like that. Like I have a bit of an obsessive personality in sometimes. So I don't know if like that's a good marker for other people, but that's how it was for me. But I think that you can tell when you're experiencing meaningful work and where you're in flow, where you lose track of time, where you're absorbed in what you're doing and you're kind of loving it. And this is something that I could spend my every day doing. I think that that's ultimately what people are seeking when they're looking for meaningful work. And I would say it's a privilege also. It's a privilege to have found this. And one of the structural things that helped me was that fact that I didn't have any student loan debt because my parents paid for my college. And so I was able to take these gaps in at different points in my career. And I wouldn't have been able to do that probably if I had student loans. And I think that's also just like thinking about all the ways in which we could be doing things differently. Like we could have free college, we could, and it would free up so many people to then be able to take time and be able to like, I can take a step back and I could think about what do I actually want to be spending my time, my life doing rather than going straight into work to a job that you don't like, and staying there because you have no choice but to continue paying off your student loans. Yeah, so that's also like my life circumstances helped me find my meaningful path.
All right. Do you look ahead? Do you think about where you're going to be in 10 years from now?
10 years? No. I mean, ultimately with my family, we do want to spend more time outside of the city, especially with my son. Like I would love him growing up a little bit more immersed in nature in a day to day and like having a garden and having him be able to spend time in that garden. Like that's a big vision. But the big thing that I'm focused on now, in addition to my new job, is the Office of Circularity, which is basically taking all these patterns that I've noticed over the past nearly a decade of going through the trash and saying like, why can't we do things differently? Why can't we do this targeted intervention to reduce waste in this very specific way and do it systemically? Because there's really only so much I can be doing as a single individual. And I'm aware that in some ways I've made a difference and in a lot of ways I have not at all. And so, like I have a long, long list of things I want to achieve. Like I want to achieve across corporations, across residents, across school waste, across institutional government waste, all these different ways that like there are ways like the patterns and say like the frequency with which I see these waste issues and saying like just a small tweak, we could be doing something differently and better.
And lastly, if there's one thing you could tell everybody to do or change or anything like that to help with this problem, and it's a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell students, yeah, we throw something away and we never think about it again. But just because we threw it away doesn't mean it disappeared.
Yeah.
And I think we don't talk about it enough. So if there's one thing that you would tell people, please do this, what would it be?
I would say please get involved with your local government, and you should have a direct relationship with your council member. You should join a group that is already fighting for an issue that you care about, or if not, start your own group. And there's so much power in working in a coalition to fight for systemic change on the local level, which is achievable. Like that is like talking about our power. That's where our power lies, actually. Our power lies on the local level. And I think that's part of what my frustration is like that it's only on the local level and doesn't seem to exist on the state level or the federal level. But on the local level, we can actually achieve things. And it's important not to do it alone because you're going to burn out and also you're not going to be as effective if you do it alone. You need a group of people together so you can all make phone calls. You can all testify at city council. You can all like use your unique skills to spread the campaign. So like someone runs the social media and someone does in-person events and someone meets with the legislators. Like you need a bunch of different people doing a bunch of different things in order to make a campaign successful. So really and I think that one of the positive side effects is that you meet aligned people who then can become mentors and friends, and you're building your network too. So if you're seeking a job, that's also a great thing. And you're building your resume and doing something within your control to help your career and help your ambitions. So I think that that's one of the most powerful things to do. And so even if you have a job that's not your passion, that's not where you find meaning, like you can also find it working on the local level in a coalition. And then maybe eventually that can become a full-time job. So I would say really like that's where we need more people, and also we need more young people. I'm part of the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board, and if you go to one of their meetings, I think a lot of the people are people with more free time who tend to be retired, so they're older. We need younger people in these movements, and it's not enough to be posting on your own social media accounts about how you wish something would change, because that doesn't actually move the needle. Like it's better than not posting, right? You're putting something out into the universe, you're letting people know, but it doesn't actually have an impact. And the way to have an impact is to join a coalition and then work systemically on the local level. I think that's like one of the most powerful things people can be doing.
Right. I think that's great. Anna, thank you so much. I appreciate all the work you're doing and getting that message and that word out there. And congratulations on your successes. And I'm sure you'll have many more.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. If Anna's story got you thinking about the things we throw away, the systems we've built, or your own search for work that actually matters, I hope you'll stay in it. The most powerful thing you can do, as Anna said, is start local. Get to know your council member, join a coalition, find the specific issue you care about, and work on it with other people. You're more effective in community than you are alone. If you want to follow Anna's work, find her on Instagram at The Trash Walker, where she documents what she finds on her trash walks, advocates for composting and waste legislation, and calls out corporate destruction in real time. You can also see her story and her work in the documentary Buy Now: The Shopping Conspiracy on Netflix. As always, if today's conversation meant something to you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave us a review, subscribe, and come see the work we are doing at KeystoneNetwork.org, where we are providing young adults from diverse backgrounds with the resources and support they need to chart successful paths into the future. Whether you're navigating the unknown, making a pivot, or still figuring it out one step at a time, you're not alone. The route may not be linear, but there is always a way forward. I'm Monica Argandonia, and I'll see you next time on Path Found.